Hello Nigerians, we have a breaking news and this is very serious.
Right now, as I speak to you, there is a full-blown standoff between the Nigeria police force and one of the loudest voices on Nigerian social media, Martins Vincent Otse, the man millions of you know simply as VeryDarkMan. This is not the usual online drama. This one has gone from a lawyer's conference hall in Port Harcourt straight to an official police statement and now into a public back and forth that touches on kidnapping, checkpoints, and the safety of every single Nigerian who travels this country's highways. Please, I am asking you, stay with me till the end of this one, because there are layers to this story that are not making it into the short clips flying around your WhatsApp status. We will unpack the documents, the statements, the exact words used by both sides, and what is fact versus what is still just an allegation. This story is landing at a very sensitive time. Insecurity is already the #1 worry for millions of Nigerian families. Kidnapping for ransom has torn communities apart from Kaduna to Kogi to Enugu. And now we have a man with over 10 million followers standing on a national platform telling Nigerians that some of the very officers meant to protect them on the highway may be feeding information to the criminals. Before I continue, if you are new to this channel, please like this video, subscribe and turn on your notification bell because we will be tracking this story as it develops and you do not want to miss the next update. Now, back to the news. Let us start from the very beginning because context matters here. This whole controversy did not start on Twitter, it did not start on Instagram. It started inside a hall full of lawyers. The Nigerian Bar Association held its 66th annual General Conference in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, running from the 21st of August to the 28th of August this year, 2026. It is one of the biggest legal gatherings in the country, where senior advocates, judges, government officials, and stakeholders converge every year to talk about the state of the nation. Now, somewhere in the middle of that conference, on a session dedicated to insecurity, VeryDarkMan appeared as a panelist. Think about that for a moment. A social media activist, not a lawyer, not a security expert by training, sitting on a panel at one of the most prestigious legal conferences in Nigeria, invited to speak on the very serious matter of insecurity. And he did not hold back. Also on that same panel was a serving commissioner of police, Silas Aremu, who heads the Safer Highway Unit under the Department of Operations. So this was not VeryDarkMan shouting into a phone camera alone in his room. This was VeryDarkMan face to face on a stage with a senior police officer sitting right there listening to him. That detail alone tells you why this story escalated so fast, because the accusation was not made in the dark corners of the internet. It was made in the open, in front of the very institution being accused. So what exactly did VeryDarkMan say? Let us be precise, because in stories like this, the exact wording matters. According to multiple reports from that session, VeryDarkMan alleged that some police officers manning checkpoints along Nigeria's major highways identify wealthy-looking travelers and then relay information about their identity and their movement to kidnappers and bandits. The claim in plain terms is that a traveler could pass through a checkpoint, get profiled as someone with money, and that information could end up in the hands of criminal gangs who then plan an abduction for ransom. He did not stop there. He also made comments suggesting that cattle are being used as a channel for money laundering in this country, and he went further to accuse the government and security agencies of actually benefiting from the insecurity, while it is ordinary Nigerians who suffer the kidnappings, the ransom payments, and the fear of traveling their own roads. Now, I want you to notice something here. These are heavy claims. If even a fraction of this is true, then we are talking about a level of institutional betrayal that goes beyond corruption. We are talking about security personnel allegedly working hand in hand with the very criminals they are paid to stop. That is the weight of what was said in that hall in Port Harcourt. Now, here is something many people are missing, because the headlines jumped straight to the police's formal statement 2 days later. But there was already a response right there on the panel from Commissioner Silas Aremu himself. His counter was essentially this, that it could just as easily be the other way around, that criminals themselves monitor police checkpoints watch their locations and their patterns of activity, and use that surveillance to track and target travelers, rather than officers leaking information to them. Think about that for a moment. Two competing theories of the same crime pattern coming from two men sitting on the same panel in the same room at the same time. One says the enemy is inside the checkpoint, the other says the enemy is watching the checkpoint from outside. And both of those things, corrupt officers on one hand, criminals conducting surveillance on their own, are documented realities in different parts of Nigeria's security history. So even at this early stage, before any police statement, before any social media firestorm, you already had a genuine, unresolved argument about where the real threat is coming from on our highways. Now let us move to what is documented, what is officially on record, because this is where we separate fact from noise. On Thursday, the 27th of August 2026, the Nigeria Police Force issued a formal written statement signed by its Public Relations Officer CSP Ani Iniedu. This is a fact. The statement exists, it was signed, it was released to multiple newsrooms across the country. In that statement, the force described VeryDarkMan's allegation as unsubstantiated and unfairly damaging to an institution that is meant to protect millions of Nigerians. The police maintained that personnel deployed to checkpoints nationwide are tasked with preventing crime, detecting criminal activity, and protecting citizens, not facilitating kidnappings. They pointed out, and this is also documented, that police officers have been ambushed, attacked, and in some cases killed by the very kidnappers and terrorists they are accused of colluding with. That is a fact that deserves to be said plainly. There is a real human cost that officers on the ground have paid, and the force used that history to push back hard against what it called a blanket accusation against its personnel. The statement went further. It said that where individual officers are found to have compromised their duties, they would face disciplinary action and prosecution. That is an official commitment, on record, in writing. Now, here is the heart of the matter. The part that has made this a national conversation and not just another social media beef. The police statement contained a direct, formal invitation. In the words carried by multiple outlets, the force called on Otse to produce, without delay, the evidence upon which he based these serious allegations. Specifically, any evidence showing that officers at checkpoints identify wealthy individuals and pass that information to kidnappers to facilitate abductions. The force said any credible information provided would be treated with urgency and investigated thoroughly. They also used the moment to appeal to the wider public. Anyone with credible evidence of police misconduct, they said, should report it through the appropriate channels so that investigations and, where necessary, legal action can follow. On paper, this looks like an institution inviting scrutiny. That is one honest way to read it. But there is a second layer here that we must not skip. The police also used the same statement to draw a boundary. They warned Nigerians against circulating what they called unsubstantiated allegations involving national security institutions, saying such claims could weaken public trust and undermine national security. So in one single statement, you have an invitation to produce evidence sitting right beside a warning about the danger of unproven claims. Both of those things are officially on record, word for word, from the same release. So how did VeryDarkMan respond to this invitation? This is where the story took its next sharp turn. Rather than simply handing over documents or evidence directly to the police, Otse posted a video reaction on his Instagram page. In that video, he made his position very clear. He said he was not going to hand his evidence over to the police. His reasoning, in his own words, was that he expected to be charged to court over this matter anyway, and that if that happens, he would rather present his evidence there, before a judge, in a courtroom, rather than submit it quietly to the same institution his allegations are aimed at. Now, whether you agree with that decision or not, you have to admit it is a calculated one. He is essentially saying, I do not trust the process of handing this over informally. I would rather this matter go through a formal judicial process where there is a record, a judge, and full public scrutiny. That is his stated position on record in his own video. It also means, as things stand right now, there has been no public handover of evidence from VeryDarkMan to the Nigeria Police Force. That is the current verified state of affairs going into this weekend.
Let me pause here and do what I promised you at the start. Separate what we know for certain from what remains a claim. Here is what we know for certain. We know VeryDarkMan made the checkpoint allegation publicly on a panel at the NBA conference. We know Commissioner Silas Aremu offered a counter-explanation on the same panel. We know the Nigeria police force issued a signed written statement on the 27th of August rejecting the allegation and inviting evidence. We know VeryDarkMan responded publicly, refusing to hand evidence directly to the police and stating a preference for a courtroom process. All of that is documented, verifiable, and a matter of public record. Now, here is what remains a claim, not a fact. Whether any police officer anywhere in Nigeria has actually passed traveler information to kidnappers, that remains unproven one way or the other. Whether VeryDarkMan actually possesses solid evidence for his claim, or whether this was drawn from rumor, isolated incidents, or pattern observation without documentary proof, we do not know because no evidence has been made public yet. And whether the government or security agencies are, as he also claimed, benefiting from the insecurity, that too remains an allegation, not an established fact. Keep that distinction in your mind as we go on. Now, let me give you the strongest version of both sides of this argument without me declaring a winner, because that is not my job as your anchor tonight. Let us start with the case for VeryDarkMan. His defenders will tell you that Nigeria has a long, documented history of insider compromise within security institutions. Cases of officers colluding with criminal networks have appeared before courts and disciplinary panels in this country over the years. So the underlying possibility he's raising is not fantasy, it is grounded in a pattern that has happened before. Supporters also argue that if ordinary citizens wait for perfect court-ready evidence before ever raising an alarm, many wrongdoings would never come to light in the first place. That public pressure, even before formal proof, has historically pushed institutions in Nigeria toward greater accountability. And on the question of why he will not simply hand evidence to the police quietly, his supporters would argue that a public figure making an allegation against the very body meant to receive that evidence has every reason to prefer a transparent, judicially supervised process rather than an internal one that the public cannot see or verify. Now let us give the Nigeria police force its strongest argument too, even-handedly. Their position is that an institution of hundreds of thousands of officers spread across every state in this federation cannot fairly be condemned as a whole based on one man's unverified claim made without a single document, name, location, or date attached to it in public. They will tell you that officers, real human beings with families, are out on those same highways every single day, and some of them have paid with their lives confronting the very kidnappers and terrorists this allegation implies they are working with. From their point of view, if VeryDarkMan truly has evidence, the correct lawful step is to bring it forward so that guilty officers can be identified, disciplined, and prosecuted, not to leave an entire national institution under a cloud of suspicion indefinitely, with no case file, no names, and no resolution. They will also point out that inviting him to submit evidence and promising urgent investigation of anything credible is exactly the kind of accountability process that critics usually demand, and that refusing to engage with that process while continuing to make the allegation publicly is itself worth scrutinizing.
Now, there is another layer to this story that most channels are not even touching, and I promised you we would go deeper. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, the respected human rights lawyer Femi Falana, weighed in publicly on this entire episode. Speaking on Channels Television's Sunrise Daily program, Falana criticized the Nigerian Bar Association itself for inviting VeryDarkMan to the conference in the first place. His argument was that professional legal conferences of that stature should be reserved for intellectual engagement, bringing together people with established expertise and practical experience in the subject matter, rather than personalities invited primarily, in his view, for entertainment value. This is significant, Nigerians, because it means this controversy is no longer just about the police versus VeryDarkMan. It has opened up a wider debate within the legal profession itself about who gets a seat at the table when the nation is discussing something as serious as insecurity, and whether platforming a viral social media figure on a panel with a serving commissioner of police was a wise decision by the NBA's organizers in the first place. Some lawyers have defended the invitation, arguing that VeryDarkMan's public advocacy on insecurity, whatever its flaws, reflects genuine grassroots frustration that deserves a hearing. Others side with Falana. That argument, too, is still ongoing. And here is something that gives you the full picture of just how long this tension has been building. This is not the first challenge VeryDarkMan has received over his allegations against the Nigeria police force. Weeks before this NBA conference controversy, an independent civic group called the Police Integrity Organization held a news conference in Abuja tagged, and I quote the title directly, "Setting the Record Straight on the Nigerian Police versus VeryDarkMan Ongoing Nuisance." The convener of that group, Mr. Isaiah David Ijele, said the organization was prepared to debate VeryDarkMan openly on his allegations and present documents obtained from the courts to support the police's position. He also raised a pointed question. Why, he asked, had VeryDarkMan not responded to earlier invitations from police commands in both Lagos and Abuja, asking him to come forward with evidence relating to previous allegations he had made? Another executive of that group, Mr. Uneku Ocheche, went further, accusing VeryDarkMan of building his assessment of the police on information from a single source. Now, whether that civic group is truly independent or whether it has its own alignment with police interests is itself a fair question that thoughtful viewers should be asking. But what this tells us without question is that the pattern of VeryDarkMan alleges and authority demands evidence has repeated itself more than once this year alone.
For those of you who may not fully know him, let me give you some background, because understanding the man helps you understand why this story traveled so fast. Martins Vincent Otsi was born on the 8th of April 1994 in Abuja. Over the past few years, he has become one of the most talked about and most controversial online figures in this country, known for public callouts, exposés and disputes involving celebrities, business figures, and public officials. His critics accuse him of selective activism, of making allegations without always backing them up with adequate verification, and of using controversy to build his own online engagement and influence. His supporters see something different. They view his activities as a legitimate form of social commentary and public accountability in a country where many citizens feel that official channels move too slowly or not at all. In October 2024, he founded the Martins Vincent Otse Initiative, a non-governmental organization based in Abuja focused on education reform, community development, and financial transparency in the non-profit sector, an organization that reportedly raised over 33 million naira from small donors within its first 24 hours. So love him or criticize him, VeryDarkMan is not a nobody shouting into the void. He commands real attention, real reach, and now real friction with one of the most powerful institutions in Nigeria.
Now, let us bring this back to you, the ordinary Nigerian watching this video. Because at the end of the day, this is not really about VeryDarkMan's Instagram page or the police's press office. It is about the highway your brother traveled on last weekend, the checkpoint your mother passed through on her way to the village, the fear that sits in the back of every traveler's mind these days when a uniformed officer waves them down. If even one credible case emerges showing an officer leaked information to kidnappers, that is a matter that should shake this country to its core and demand real, visible reform, not just a statement, but actual structural change in how checkpoints are manned, monitored, and held accountable. But equally, if this allegation turns out to be unsubstantiated, thrown into the public space without proof, then ordinary Nigerians are the ones who pay a different price, a further erosion of trust in the men and women who, whatever their institution's flaws, still stand at checkpoints in the rain, at night, in dangerous corridors, trying to keep the rest of us safe.
Either way, silence and rumor help nobody. What ordinary Nigerians need and deserve is a resolution, evidence-tested, claims verified or dismissed, and consequences that actually follow whichever way the truth points.
So Nigerians, here is my honest take as we close tonight. Whatever side of this you fall on, the path forward is not more videos, not more press statements traded back and forth. It is due process. If VeryDarkMan has evidence, the courts, not just the police, not just social media, should see it tested properly. And if the Nigeria police force is serious about its own invitation, then it must be seen to genuinely investigate, transparently, whatever comes forward, rather than treating this as a public relations exercise that quietly disappears once the news cycle moves on. As you continue to follow this story, here are the open questions you should be watching for. Will VeryDarkMan actually appear before any court with the evidence he claims to have? Will the Nigeria police force open any independent, verifiable investigation even without his direct cooperation? Will the Nigerian Bar Association respond to Femi Falana's criticism over his invitation to the conference? And will the Police Integrity Organization's earlier challenge for an open debate ever actually happen, or was it simply another statement in a long list of statements? Those are the threads we will be pulling on in our coming reports. If this breakdown helped you understand what is really going on, do me a favor, like this video. Share it with someone who has been following this story on scattered clips. Subscribe if you have not already, and drop your own take in the comments below, because I read every single one of them. This has been your update on the standoff between the Nigeria police force and VeryDarkMan. For Niger News Online, I am your anchor, and as always, we will keep digging until Nigerians get the full, honest story. Till next time, take care of yourselves and stay safe out there.